Fear is a strange companion. It walks beside us quietly, sometimes whispering, sometimes shouting, shaping the way we see the world. It tells us where we can go and where we cannot. It decides which dreams feel possible and which ones feel dangerous. And after many years, most people no longer question it. They simply assume that fear is a natural part of being alive, something that must always remain. But what if fear is not as powerful as it appears? What if the greatest secret to living without fear is not about fighting it, but about seeing it clearly? There is a story hidden in the heart of every human being, a story about separation. At some point in life, you begin to believe that you are alone in a vast and uncertain world. You feel small in front of time, fragile in front of change, vulnerable in front of loss. From this belief, fear begins to grow like a shadow at sunset. The mind whispers, "Protect yourself. Be careful. Do not trust too much. Do not risk too much." And slowly, a life that was meant to be open and flowing becomes cautious and guarded. But the Persian mystic Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi would tell us that fear is not born from the world itself. It is born from forgetting who we truly are. When a wave forgets that it belongs to the ocean, every movement feels like danger. The wind becomes a threat. The shore becomes a collision. Every moment feels uncertain. Yet the moment the wave remembers the ocean, something changes. It realizes that even when its form disappears, the water remains. In much the same way, fear grows when we believe we are only the fragile form we see in the mirror, only the thoughts that pass through the mind, only the identity we have constructed over time. We cling to this image as if it were our entire existence. And because everything in the world eventually changes, the mind becomes terrified of losing what it tries so desperately to protect. Fear then becomes a constant advisor. It tells us to hold tightly to what we have. It tells us to avoid what might hurt us. It tells us to build walls around the heart so that nothing can break it. But these walls come with a hidden cost. The same walls that protect the heart also prevent it from fully living. Rumi often spoke about love as the great dissolver of fear. Not romantic love alone, but a deeper love that connects us to life itself. A love that sees the unity behind all forms. When this love awakens, fear begins to lose its authority. Because fear thrives in separation, but love reveals connection. Think about a moment when you truly felt connected to something greater than yourself. Perhaps when you stood under a night sky filled with stars, or when music touched your soul so deeply that words disappeared. In those moments, something inside becomes quiet. The endless calculations of the mind stop for a brief instant, and within that silence, fear fades. This happens because fear belongs to the mind's attempt to control the future. The mind constantly tries to predict what might happen next, building endless scenarios of danger and loss. It imagines rejection before speaking, failure before trying, heartbreak before loving. And through these imagined futures, fear becomes a permanent resident in the mind. But Rumi would gently remind us that life does not unfold inside the mind's imagination. Life unfolds in the present moment. And in the present moment, fear rarely exists in the way we imagine it. It exists mostly as a thought about what might happen, not what is happening. This is why the secret to living without fear does not begin by conquering the world around you. It begins by understanding the voice inside you that constantly predicts danger. Once you start observing that voice, something remarkable happens. You begin to see that fear is often nothing more than a story the mind repeats to keep control. And the moment you see fear as a story rather than a command, its grip begins to loosen. Because a story can be listened to, but it does not have to be obeyed. From this point, a quiet transformation begins to unfold inside you. Not through force, not through struggle, but through awareness. You start to notice how often fear appears before anything has actually happened. You notice how the mind builds entire futures from a single thought. And little by little, you begin to question whether the mind's warnings are truly guiding you, or simply keeping you from discovering the vastness of life. And once this questioning begins, another deeper realization slowly starts to emerge. Because once you begin to question fear, you start to notice something that was always hidden in plain sight. Fear speaks loudly, but the truth within you is silent. Fear rushes, pushes, warns, and predicts. But the deeper part of you, the part that Rumi would call the soul, does not shout. It waits patiently beneath the noise of the mind. Many people believe that courage means destroying fear, but Rumi would smile gently at that idea. He would say that fear is like a shadow on the wall. If you try to fight the shadow, you only exhaust yourself. The secret is not to attack the shadow, but to turn toward the light that created it. When the light becomes stronger, the shadow naturally disappears. Fear survives because we believe the mind must always be obeyed. The mind sees danger everywhere because its nature is to protect the body and preserve what it knows. It remembers pain from the past and tries to prevent it from happening again. In doing so, it becomes cautious, suspicious, and sometimes even controlling. But life is not something that can be controlled in this way. Life moves like a river, always changing, always flowing. When the mind tries to freeze the river, fear appears. Imagine standing at the edge of a flowing stream. If you place your hand in the water and try to stop the current, the water pushes against you. The harder you resist it, the stronger the pressure becomes. Fear often feels like this because it is born from resistance. The mind tries to hold life still, but life refuses to remain still. Rumi understood that freedom begins the moment we stop resisting the movement of life. When you allow the river to flow, something beautiful happens. The struggle disappears. The water moves around you naturally, effortlessly, and you realize that the current was never your enemy. In the same way, many fears dissolve when you stop trying to control every possible outcome. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of loss, these are often born from the mind's desire to guarantee safety. But life was never designed to offer such guarantees. It offers something much more mysterious: experience. The moment you begin to trust the unfolding of life, fear loses much of its power. This trust does not mean that difficult moments will never come. Storms will still appear. Loss will still happen. Uncertainty will still exist. But when the heart learns to trust the flow of existence, these events no longer feel like threats to your identity. They become part of the journey. Rumi often spoke about the idea of surrender, though many people misunderstand this word. Surrender does not mean giving up on life. It means releasing the illusion that you must control everything in order to be safe. It means recognizing that there is a deeper intelligence moving through life, one that the mind alone cannot fully understand. Think of a seed buried in the earth. From the perspective of the seed, the darkness of the soil might feel like an ending. The shell begins to break. The familiar form begins to disappear. If the seed could think like the human mind, it might panic and believe something terrible is happening. But in reality, the seed is not dying. It is transforming. Fear often appears in the same way when transformation begins in our lives. The mind sees the breaking of the old shell and interprets it as danger. But the soul recognizes that growth is unfolding. This is why Rumi would say that fear is often a doorway rather than a barrier. Behind many of the things we fear most deeply are the experiences that expand our lives the most. Speaking the truth, we have been hiding, following a calling that feels uncertain, opening the heart after it has once been hurt. The mind sees these moments and shouts, "Do not go there. It is not safe." But the soul whispers something different. This is where life begins. The more you listen to that quieter voice, the more your relationship with fear begins to change. Fear may still appear, but it no longer commands you. It becomes a signal that you are standing at the edge of something unknown. And the unknown, though it frightens the mind, is often the birthplace of freedom. As this understanding grows, another realization begins to emerge slowly within you, one that Rumi returned to again and again in his poetry and teachings. The realization that the opposite of fear is not bravery, but love. Love has a strange power over fear. Where fear tightens the heart, love opens it. Where fear builds walls, love dissolves them. And this is why many of the teachings attributed to Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi do not focus on fighting fear directly, but on expanding the heart until fear simply has no place left to live. Think about a small room filled with darkness. If you try to remove the darkness with your hands, you will fail every time. Darkness cannot be pushed out or fought with effort. But the moment you light a candle, the darkness disappears without struggle. Love works in exactly the same way within the human heart. When you begin to live from love rather than from fear, something within you changes. The need to control every situation slowly fades. The anxiety about what others think begins to lose its grip. The constant tension of trying to predict the future softens. Love does not promise certainty, but it brings a deeper kind of trust. Rumi often hinted that fear grows strongest when we forget who we truly are. When we believe we are only the fragile identity created by the mind, our reputation, our achievements, our roles in society, then every possible loss feels terrifying. If that identity is threatened, the mind reacts as if our very existence is at risk. But beneath that temporary identity lives something much deeper, a presence that existed before every success and every failure. A quiet awareness that observes every thought, every emotion, every experience that moves through your life. This deeper self is not easily shaken by the uncertainties of the world. When you begin to rest in that deeper awareness, fear starts to look different. It becomes something passing, something temporary, like clouds drifting across a wide sky. The sky itself remains untouched. This is why the path described by Rumi is not about becoming fearless in the traditional sense. It is about remembering the vastness within you. When you recognize that vastness, the storms of the mind lose their authority. You may still feel fear before making an important decision. You may still feel uncertainty when stepping into the unknown. But those feelings no longer imprison you. They simply pass through you while something deeper continues to move forward. And perhaps this is the true secret to living without fear. Not eliminating fear, but discovering that you are larger than it. Life will continue to present moments that challenge your comfort. Moments when the mind tells you to stay small, stay quiet, stay safe. But the voice of the soul gently invites you towards something greater. To step beyond the narrow walls of fear and into the wide landscape of possibility. Each time you listen to that deeper invitation, the prison of fear weakens a little more. Each time you act from love instead of anxiety, the heart grows stronger. And slowly, almost invisibly, a new way of living begins to take shape within you. A life where courage is not forced, but natural. A life where trust replaces constant worry. A life where the unknown is no longer something to avoid, but something to explore. If these reflections resonate with you and you enjoy exploring wisdom like this, inspired by the teachings of Rumi, consider subscribing to the channel so this community can continue to grow. Your support helps bring more reflections, philosophy, and timeless teachings to more people around the world. And if this message touched you in some way, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who might also need to hear these words today.